Would you please state your reasons for applying for the superintendency of our district?
I'd be glad to. I'll take a drink here. I got blown in, so if I'm not very photogenic for a couple minutes, give me a little bit of slack, okay? I try to look pretty, but I think I'm probably not going to look so great. But no, it was really actually pretty easy. You know, you have a really nice district focused on students. It's the philosophies that, you know, as I did the research on your district, same type of philosophies that I have. It's a student-oriented district. I think it's cliched for people just to say that, you know, the district's a great fit, you know, but I really believe that researching what I have, it'd be a good transition for me. The size of the district is similar to mine. The quality of the programs is similar to the district where I come from. I think it's important for a superintendent to be able to make a good transition into a position. So there'd be a minimal problems with that transition, and I think that's important. And the last thing is, I make no bones about it, location is good for me too. My son lives in Chicago, and I want to get over on this side of the state, and I'd like to stay somewhere for the rest of my career where I could be closer to my son, very close, and he's grown up, moved away, and I'm very fond of him. So those are the reasons.
Thank you.
My question's next, and it's a two-part question.
Okay.
What have you learned about our district specifically, and do you have some suggestions for creating a specific direction to take for our district based on what you know?
Well, a couple things. One, I've noticed a lot of pride in the district. Specifically, it's a K-12, I'll put it this way, a K-12 plus kind of philosophy. I mean, you have an alternative school. It takes a lot of guts to have an alternative school because, and I think it's a good thing, but they're difficult to have success with alternative schools, but you're taking on that task, and I think it's a good thing to do. But they have trouble making AYP, and you're working with that. Your scores, I've noticed, are good, but you've had some slippage over the last couple of years in some of your schools, but you're still making AYP. And some candidates might say, geez, I'm not going to talk about that, but I'm a realist and I'm an honest person, and that's the thing that I think you'd have to address. I came here, assessments, I put assessments in place that would, formative and summative assessments to address that. But having not been here, you know, for a while, and that's what would have to happen. I'd have to come in and assess some of those things. But one of the things I think is you have excellent facilities. You have, it's obvious that you have good rapport with your staff, and there's a collective agreement on where you're going. I think that one thing I would do also is, you know, I think there's a need for a continued strategic philosophy of where you're going for some strong long-term goals and short-term goals. But I mean, you're going in the right direction, obviously. So you don't need somebody who's going to come in and change the world. You need somebody who's going to come in and work with you in a collaborative manner, and I'm strong in that area. So,
Thank you.
Would you describe the process you go through to assess the condition of our school district's finances, educational programs, and community resources? So they went from her two to my three parts.
Yeah, well, actually, when you assess those three areas, you do it in a similar manner. I think one of the things that superintendents do, and I am a practicing superintendent. It's when I was a principal going into the superintendency, you do it a little bit differently because you have what I call zero-based knowledge, really about how to do it. You have to kind of learn it more on the fly. But now that I'm a practicing superintendent with experience, you go into a district and you take in as much information as you can. You kind of you have a lot of papers on your desk and you're absorbing it. The first thing you have to do is, I think I use this analogy a lot. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that's why you listen twice as much. It's very important to get all the stakeholders into the office as quickly as possible. So I would look at your finances, and I would say, you know, obviously it's critical right now. There's a lot of talk from the state level about, you know, giving us, I like this analogy, giving us money back. But the truth of it is that with retirement, actually the increase in retirement is ridiculously high. So giving us $100 per student towards retirement is kind of a fallacy. So we need to look at where you're at, and having long-term projections is almost, it's very difficult because of the way we do our fiscal year. So I would like to look at, you know, what types of things are we looking for down the line. We have to have a plan for curriculum. We have to have a plan for finances. We have to have a plan for where you want to go as far as a district. What are what kind of programs do you want to have? All these things cost, you know, money and resources. So you need to sit down and we need to look at those things. And those are items that are done in you know, individually. I would talk to each board member and say, you know, what's your opinion? Do the same thing with the stakeholders, and try to get a consensus of where we're going. Because it doesn't matter what the former superintendent or the current superintendent, really what his vision is. It's really what our vision is. You know, we have to develop a collaborative vision, and that vision then and that mission goes out with the help of all the stakeholders. So. I think that's where I would start with that.
Okay, Michael, over to me. What do you think is your greatest administrative strength, and how do you think that would help our school district?
Well, I would say well, there's a couple things, and I'm not. Probably my greatest strength is I'm a people person. I'm collaborative. I'm a people person. I have a very good knowledge of curriculum and working with people, and trying to get the best out of people. So I don't have a huge ego that has to do everything myself. I've learned that over time. I think it's important to let people do their job and to encourage them to do their job and hold people accountable to that. So if you said my #1 strength, I'm a people person, a collaborative person. And there's other strengths that I have, and I'm glad that if you want me to go into depth on another question, I'll be glad to do that for you. Pass.
Sure, yeah. The greatest one is what?
Yeah.
That's what you think feels
Yeah.
the greatest one.
Yeah.
Okay. As class sizes go up and everybody's doing more with less, could you give us some specific examples about how you would build trust and motivate staff members?
Yeah. I think, you know, too many superintendents stay in the office, and I'm a hands-on person. I schedule classroom visits, and I get to know the staff. And there's nothing that I expect of the staff that I wouldn't do myself. So if it comes to cuts, then I'm right there with them. So, you know, everyone is getting hurt by the financial situation we're going through. So, you know, I have a freeze on my salary. You know, everybody's, you know, hurting right now. So, as far as class sizes, I think what you have to do with class sizes is you have to really look at programs that minimize the impact on student learning. And what I mean by that is the class sizes go up, that you have to find things that will still ensure that learning takes place and encourage, you know, because you can easily slip into a negative kind of doldrum, you know, and I am an optimist by nature. We will get through this. Things will get better. The sun will come up, you know, and I'm an encouraging person, and I will always stick to that. You know, I encourage teachers, and you know, I always say that if class sizes are big right now, then when money gets more plentiful, we will work towards, you know, and getting those class sizes down. But right now, it's happening all over the state, you know, and that's just, you can't, you know, I don't make promises I can't keep, so I'm very careful not to do that. But getting into the classrooms and seeing, if somebody says, you know, this is what hurting kids, I'm going to be very cognizant of that and making sure that I see it firsthand. So that's how I would address that.
Michael, you got me, I guess. Everyone receives suggestions for their improvement in their performance reviews.
Okay.
What was suggested for your improvement in your last evaluation? How you've been working in that area?
we haven't, probably I take things personally as far as my job. I want to do the best I can in all areas. So but I take constructive criticism well. I would say that, you know, just trying to, I'm a type A person, I work hard. So I think probably I would say that not taking everything personally, not trying, you know, when the economy's bad, it's not my fault. You know, but I feel like it is sometimes. I feel like everything's, you know, the responsibility of, it's at the top. I feel bad when there's layoffs. I feel bad, you know, when things go wrong with the district. But I have to sometimes let that go. I have to be able to be a strong leader. Sometimes you have to be able to be flexible. And but I am a type A person. I'm a hard worker, and I come to work and I early and leave late. So that's you know, some people think that's not a good thing, but you know, as I've gotten older, I've started to address that a little bit, because you have to also have, you know, family time, and well, my wife reminds me of that. So
Good. Thank you.
Michael's down to me.
all right, Dave.
How would you evaluate our curriculum and the use of technology to improve student learning?
I think technology, that's a good question. I mean, I noticed that I looked at all your handbooks and what's offered, and I think you have a comprehensive curriculum. I think that's great. One of the things I think with technology, and I'm a big technology person, like right now, example of use of technology in the classroom that I think is great and that I'm doing is I use like iPads in the classroom and Kindles in the classroom. And Kindles right now, because they're more affordable than iPads, I'm tending towards, because I can get them for cheaper. But I have a senior English class that I'm using Kindles with, because we can get all of the novels on there. The textbook companies are a little slow getting on board. I think it's financial that they're a little slow, but that's another point. But the students can answer questions, and they can interact with each other in and outside of class. And then on the smart boards, you can pop up all those questions and answers, and there's a lot more dialogue. And I think what we have to understand is that students are much more advanced technologically than us, and we have to keep up with them. You know, technology advances learning, but only if we use it. If we buy all this technology and it sits and nobody uses it, it's a waste of money. So I think if we want to advance our curriculum, then we have to be able to be willing to let the kids use the technology. But technology scares people. You know, that's what I found. But if you implement it, and that's what I did a couple of board meetings ago, I brought that technology in and had the teacher and the students show the board. And so I like to show it, you know, be proud of what we're doing in the classroom and bring that into the board meetings, so we all are aware of what's going on. But you have a comprehensive curriculum, it's obvious, but I think technology can even enhance it more.
What is your most important accomplishment during the past 3 years as you work to improve student learning, and how do you evaluate the results?
Well, it's twofold. Two things but number one is, and it's been every place that I've ever been, and well, it's actually threefold, but twofold to keep things simple. One is implementing testing, making sure that you have common assessments and informative and summative assessments. The reason is because teachers cannot depend on the MME and the MEEP test to give information immediately. You need to have assessments that are current. So like if you're a teacher, you have immediate feedback on whether the Glicks and the Huskies are being taught and if they're being learned. It doesn't do us any good to wait for, you know, the data to come in at the end of the year and say, you know, post blame to, well, it's old. With information that's current, I can say as a teacher, that Glick did not get learned. For whatever reason, not posting blame, they can reteach it. And we can get kids caught up immediately. So I think that's been very effective every place I've been, and that's really helped our scores. The second thing is I'm a big advocate of literacy, K-12 literacy. So a lot of people are not really advocates of secondary literacy, but I am. Students that they can't read after second or third grade, they have about a 40 to 50% chance of not graduating from high school. Some say up to 70%, but most studies 30 to 40%. When you get into high school, people think, well, just forget about it. If they can't read in high school. Well, there is hope. A lot of people that are big literacy people like myself believe, and the statistics are showing more and more, that if you teach a student to read in high school, you can save them, and they will graduate. So those statistics range from 50 to 70% if you can teach them to read. So literacy is very important. So implementation of literacy and testing are the two biggest things. And the third thing that I've done is all-day, everyday kindergarten, because more contact time at the beginning level of a student's existence in the school system is very, very important. So those are the three things that have been very instrumental.
Can I do a follow-up?
Yeah. Sure.
What did you, when you said you implemented testing, what kind of testing have you implemented?
We have benchmark software, Limelight, Pinnacle, and we have common assessments. You know, at the high school, summative assessments would be obviously their test at the end of a chapter or whatever. But the point is that way teachers have an idea of the information that's been learned, and it's immediate. Instead of having to wait and say, geez, you know, did the MME, is it a good indicator? It's an indicator that there's, you know, it's a state national test. But the problem is that if I'm a teacher, how do I know if what I taught is getting through? Because it's really about student learning, not about teaching. You know, and that's the problem. People always focus in on teaching. When you walk through, you say, boy, everybody's teaching. Well, what if the kids aren't learning? We're here for learning, you know, because that's what is going to get our kids to the next level to compete against, you know, Hindi kids and, you know, kids from China. You know, that's what we have to start thinking about. We have to start thinking about it from a global economy standpoint. You know, and I've tried to sell that philosophy, you know, at my district. We have to be able to say that. Our students, if you can't say that, you know, what are we selling to our public? I'm proud to say that, you know, and I say this all the time, to our board, to our staff, if you can't say that you don't feel that our district is the best district within 50 miles, what does that say about us? That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you don't think our kids can compete with kids from around the world, what are we saying? And so I say, don't answer it. But if you're thinking it, we got some work to do. So I'm not afraid to take on challenges. Let's do what we have to do to make our kids the best in the world. And if it's here, we should be proud to have our kids competitive with anybody in the world. And I think it's not only possible, it has to happen. I think Americans are the brightest people in the world. So why can't we do it? I don't like excuses. I'm sorry. I know this is an interview, it's my soapbox here, but we are bright people. We can compete with anybody in the world. We've done it forever. So let's not make excuses. Let's get our kids to do what they're capable of doing. And you know, and that's been my philosophy since I've been an educator. So soapbox number 3 is. As you notice, what you see is what you get with Michael Dodge. So I apologize, and you may not want to get this, and you might say, as soon as I walk out of there, nice knowing you. So, but I am this is what you get. So.
Michael, how does the superintendent balance the importance of academic, co-curricular, and extracurricular activities in a district?
Yeah, actions speak louder than words, correct? Both my kids are college graduates. Both of them played piano. Both of them played an instrument. I think they resented me for a long time, but now they don't. And they're both athletes, and they're both really good students. They got that from their mother, I guess. But what I always said is that there's a niche for all students. And sometimes it might just be one thing. It might be drama, it might be art, it might be football, it might be whatever it is. The more stuff we take away from the experience, the less chance we have of meeting the needs of all of our kids. That's what scares me about cuts. You know, the state's making all these cuts because all of a sudden now college is more important. I always say college is important, yes. What if we have none of our kids going to college because they can't afford to do it, or they drop out before they get to college? So that philosophy's flawed. Put the money in K-12 and we'll worry about getting them to college for you. That's my philosophy. We'll do a good job of getting them there. We need the funding here at this level. But you know, that's been my philosophy. And kids need activities. They need to have the curriculum, and they need to be able to participate in activities at school. They need the clubs, they need sports, they need music, they need all that stuff. And so they can pick. And then the parents need to work with the kids in the school to balance, because some kids don't know when 17 things is too many. So that's where we balance it out. But I think it's all important to have it.
I'm next, I'm just running.
And I like your name too.
I don't want John yelling at me. Big Rapids has made AYP in all of our buildings. How would you maintain or improve upon that?
Well, it sounds like if you don't, you're gone. So I guess it's motivation. So, no, I think what you do is you have a formula that works, which is parental support, community support. You have good staff. I mean, you can tell that. Just, you know, I came up over the weekend and just kind of walked around. You know, you have to kind of, you know, at Menards and Lowe's, you got to kind of walk around and just get to see some of the people and stuff like that. But there's a community kind of philosophy. And what you do as a superintendent, smart superintendents, and there's smart superintendents and there's dumb superintendents. And hopefully I'm not a dumb superintendent, but I guess, you know, there are. But you have to look at what works. And you don't recreate the wheel, and you focus in on what works here. See, there is a philosophy that I have that things that work here may not work in another district. So you have to be cognizant of that. So when you come into a new job, you don't come in and just start changing everything. You don't just throw everything out. You know, you have to sit back and listen and analyze what's working and talk to lots of people. Because I've learned in my career that you'll say, why do they do that? And then about a month later, oh, that's why they do that. You know, so you have to. There's reasons why things work, and there's an analysis that has to take place. And that's what, no matter who you hire, needs to do that. And needs to figure out why, and that's what I would do if I were hired. That has to happen.
Michael, can you give us an example of how you would use data to improve our district performance?
That's my favorite thing to do. Like I said, data just for data's sake is, I'm not a big person just to throw up pie graphs at a meeting, okay? That to me is not useful at all. More important, I think, is to have the teachers have the data that they can massage and use at the level. Yes, you'll get the data, yes. Yes, I'll have the data, and we need to have that, okay? But it's more important to get the teachers and the administrators at the building level to understand how to use data. They need to be able to massage the data and say, we have a trend starting here that this is a good trend and ride that good trend. Here's a bad trend. We need to nip that trend. Like a couple of your buildings, the trend is downward right now. So that can be analyzed. There's a reason for that. That needs, and I can get it, but I need to get that. And then I would look at it, and there's a downward trend, and you look at the reasons why. And you analyze it and you fix it. These are not earth-shattering things. It's not the end of the world. There's ways of looking at it, and you fix it. And that's what you do with data. And but if you don't do it, the downward trend can continue to the point where you don't make AYP. So the neat thing about data is that data. Someone always used to tell me, data, you can massage data to say whatever you want. Not if you read it the correct way. Data doesn't lie if you read it the right way. It usually tells you pretty much what you need to know. And people who say you can massage it are kind of doing that to, because they want to do it that way. I always like to look at data as a chance for the teachers and administrators to see how we can improve instruction and learning. Isn't that what we're here for? I mean, really, that's what we're here for, to improve instruction and learning.
So to just take that a little step further, where do you see data going in the years ahead, both in our use or in how we would use it and how the state would expect it to be used? And what do you see as the cost and support of the cost of it?
Well, I think the worst thing that happened, now that you ask me, the worst thing that happened is data's always been important, and it's always been essential to change, to have continuous improvement. We've always needed data. But what's happened is a few people that are not really in the know about what data, the power of data, have just said, we're going to improve in teachers by putting it on their evaluation, which scares people to death. They're going to fire me. That's not what data is about. Now, if you have an ineffective teacher, administrators need to deal with that. That's a totally separate issue. Okay? A performance issue is a performance issue. If they're not a good teacher, deal with that. If a group of kids in a classroom are not doing well, okay, it can be because the teacher's not effective, yes, and the data will show that. It will. But our job as a school district is to also help that employee and improve the instruction process. It's not just to throw them away like bathwater. It's to improve that instruction. It's cheaper to do that, by the way, too, to help somebody than just throw them away. But also, it's a good way to help the whole instruction process. So it's the law, too. Data, this is how I was telling them, there is a fear of data, especially by employees, that they're going to be terminated by data. I embrace data. Just the more data you have, and there's a problem, you address the problem with the data. You say, okay, this is the weak area. So now you know your strengths and weaknesses, you address those weaknesses, and you embrace the strong areas. But the problem is people they're afraid of it. But I was telling someone the other day that administrators are held to data, teachers are held to data. We're all held to data, all the way up to you in the district, because what ends up happening is if the building is not making MIP, what happens? The state takes it over. So we're all under the same issue. So I always tell people, quit worrying about termination, quit worrying, we're a team, we work together for the betterment of the students, the betterment of the district. And I tell that to the administrators. You have an obligation to help the students, yeah. You have an obligation to help the teachers to be better teachers, which will help the students be better students. It'll help the district be a better district. The board will help you. The board will help the superintendent. The superintendent helps the board. See how this works? It's a team. And it's the law, too. So it's kind of neat that it's all working together. And so a long, convoluted way, that's how I see it.
That's good insight.
All right, back to me.
Sorry, Diana, I went on and on.
That's all right, that's all right. Good stuff. Could you give us specific examples of things that you do on a regular basis to keep your staff, the board, and the community informed about current events in the district?
Yeah, well, there's several ways of doing it. I just give you a typical synopsis of a day. Well, today, we have a building trades program, so our kids build houses. Okay, we have a program. We had a problem with one of our sewer lines going into going out of our new house. So one board member that's really interested in the house stopped by. So he wanted to know, could you update me on that? What happens there is I do not just update one board member. Now, if you ask me about that house, I think all the board members deserve to know the same thing. So I looked into it. Now everybody gets that update. So what I would do is email to all of the board members that, Diana just stopped by, I looked into it, this is what we found out. I have a philosophy that every board member deserves the same information. It's not fair to have somebody have the inside scoop on somebody. I just think it causes distrust, and I don't like to do that. It keeps me on my toes and keeps me finding out new information. So that's one way. Another way is if something really, really serious happens very quickly, I will either, if it's not life-threatening, I might email you, I might call you all. So it just depends on how quick I want to get it out to you as far as the seriousness of it. But if it's something like a big deal in the building, I'll probably call you. A lot of times, if you work locally, I will go and just stop by and see you too, just to get to know you. I'll stop and see you, say hi to you, and say, hey, here's a couple updates, and I'll do that. It's not always easy with some people work out of town and things like that, so then I have to call those board members. I have in the past had breakfast, little updates with board members that like to do that. I've been very open to whatever way I can get the information to the board. I do a monthly packet. I do a monthly update. I do a newsletter that goes to the board, and I do a newsletter that goes out to the public. One that's online, and I also we have a high level of poverty in our district, so not everybody has internet. So I do a printed version too. So that's just kind of a rough synopsis of, and I belong to the Rotary Club, so I disseminate information that way.
And your staff?
The staff, the same way I send out a staff newsletter. Right now we're going through, just like everybody else, we're going through about $1.9 million worth of cuts. So I'm having, we have committee meetings almost every week, 2 or 3 of them. So I'm encouraging staff to come to meetings as much as possible so they're updated. I communicate directly with the union heads and the leadership. I'm in the buildings a lot, so they see me around a lot. But they get updates so that they know what's going on. And we also, I'm a very transparent superintendent. Every single thing that goes on is on the website. So, my salary, before it was even popular, I had all that stuff. Before it was required, it was always on. So, pretty much you can go on and see it's all on there. And I have updates, everything that goes on in the district's on there. So.
Michael, I got a pretty easy one.
All right.
You brought an action plan to the board,
Okay.
and we voted 4-3.
Okay.
I mean, it passed, but it voted 4-3. What would that mean to you, and what would you do about it?
Well, there's 2 things. I bring things to the board that I think are important to the running of the district. They're not mine. Okay, that's the way I look at it. But if there were 3 people that voted no, I would want to know what their concerns are. I always say this, I would never say anything to the board members in front of people. I would talk to them in private. But I'm not beholden to a 7-0 situation. I mean, I like thinking people. People have an opinion. I don't need to be appeased by everybody always agreeing. I think it's healthy for people to have disagreements, and I think it's just a philosophy that we need to work together for the same common good. But I would talk to the ones who, it's not a popularity contest. I don't have an ego that says I have to have everybody agree with me all the time. You know, so I guess that's how I'd address it. You know, things that are brought to the board, I'm just trying to bring you information so that you can make a educated decision.
I don't think it's ever.
You know, and the truth, you know, and it's a good way of putting it, but you just do the best you can. Good do.
I'm just trying to keep it so I can ask you a question in
Yep.
between there, so.
Yep.
You did mention you were doing 1.9 million in cuts. What's Standish's budget?
16.
Okay.
16 point,
I just
about
wanted-
16.4.
I wanted to scale
Yeah.
that in my head.
Yeah. And we have $5.4 million fund balance. See, in my district, if you don't have, that was one of those things you were talking about. If I didn't have that kind of fund balance, so, you know, it's important. It was very important to maintain the fund balance. So, you know, our district's not used to these kind of cuts. And they're, you know, it's taken, and I want a lot of input from people because it's tough for them. So we've had a lot of meetings and a lot of input and a lot of collaboration. But like I said, ultimately, the board has to make the decisions. And we had one meeting and it's been tough. They have to make the decisions. They have to, you know, all I do is recommend and then they have to make the decisions. And, you know, it's tough.
How many buildings do you have?
We have a high school, a middle school, and 2 elementaries. And we have 1,700 students. And we have one elementary that is, you know, 300 kids. So that's the one that everybody's picking on to close. And that is a very political situation because we're Standish Sterling, and that's Sterling. So people, you know, it's not like it could be somewhere else, but that was a part of the consolidation. So there's a lot of stuff.
The building and trades program you have, that's actually, is that not a career center program, but that's actually yours?
See, we're a 2-county ISD. We're the biggest district in Aranet County. And the other 2 districts are financially strapped. And some say there will be one school district that will look hauntingly familiar to ours in a few years. And so there's a lot of speculation about what the future of those districts will be, and should we close our elementary because it could be full. See, and it's a tough thing. It's a tough decision. You know, do you wait around? Do you close it? Do you not close it? These are tough decisions for people. But meanwhile, you know, we're just like everybody else. We don't have as many kids anymore. We had 1,850 a year and a half ago. We're down to 1,700.
Do you have a lot of school of choice?
Yeah. We have a really nice district. I mean, we do. And we have nice facilities, and we built new things, and we have a pool and an auditorium and a field house, and yeah. And the problem is that nobody else has that around our area. No one has it. And the problem is that you have to go a long ways to get to us, like a lot of places. And you know, you go to the east and you're in Lake Huron. So you go to the north and there's not a whole lot. And you go to the west, you got to go a little ways. And you go to the south, and you got to go 40 miles and you're in DC. So it's tough, and we're losing kids because we have about 21% unemployment in Aranet County. So it's not because our district isn't a good district. It's just people don't have jobs. Just like Columbia.
It's a perfect lead into my question, Mike. Describe the budget development process you would use as superintendent and how you would involve the board, the staff, the community in a budget cycle under constant reduction.
Yeah. But I'm gonna use visuals. It's easier for me. I'm a visual person, but I use more of a bullseye philosophy. When things are okay, we use an analogy of when things are great and money's plentiful. There's less input from outside sources. I mean, the stakeholders are not as involved in the process. It's more us with the central office. you're getting your updates, and you know, as long as you're in the black, you get an update, you know, and a normal revision process through the board. And you know, there's not much changes from year to year. Now that we're in this volatile time, there might be, you know, multiple revisions even in a couple-month period, depending on how bad it is. We try to keep it stable as much as possible. You might have, you know, 3 or 4. You have to have at least 3, but when you're in the red. But the problem is that when that happens, you start talking about cuts. Then that's when I use more of a bullseye approach. I initially start out the board and myself were very close. We talk about, you know, what things are, you know, what do you think is the most important programs? What are holy and untouchable at this point? You know, and we all have them. You know, you talk to a band person, band's the most important thing. You talk to the athletes, parents, athletics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So we keep that real close to our chest. We talk about it. But then as cuts start to loom near, we have to chisel down and we have to get a budget. Like, and that's what I'm doing right now. We have a committee, and that committee's met multiple times. That committee was mostly board members and administrators and myself and my central office people. It gets bigger, and it encompasses more people from the community, stakeholders, teachers, union members, et cetera, union presidents, et cetera. And it just gets bigger until it's a kind of like a committee of the whole type philosophy. And it's a long process, but when you're talking a couple $1 million cut out of a $16 million budget or whatever, and your budget's similar, you now have things that are very important to people. So what programs are we gonna get rid of? That's tough, and that's where you have to start. I mean, we were looked at just closing the pool for 3 months, and I thought, you know, I'm not for that, but I thought there was going to be bloodshed over just closing the pool for 3 months. I mean, people have definite philosophies about what is important, but this gets people out and talking about it. And then you start getting people, so then I can say, yeah, but is that more important than books for our kindergartners? And then they'll say, well, no. Okay, see, now they got the dialogue, you know, got the dialogue. So what's the most important thing? Well, student learning. And that talk has to happen. So that's how I get it started, and that's how we whittle it down. And now I have a sheet that has the sacred things on it. And that sheet has $1.9 million worth of cuts. And it takes a long time. And I hand it to the board, and the board goes. And that's still a process. We're going to be, you know, a couple more meetings probably.
Okay, Michael, what process would you use to evaluate administrators, and how would you direct the district to deal with an ineffective staff?
Staff member, teacher.
Whatever you want to call staff member, teacher, whatever.
Well, that's what I want to know. Are you talking about teacher, or are you talking about custodian, a bus driver?
Any staff.
Okay.
You make your choice.
Okay.
Do your choice.
Okay. Well, then I'll just say staff members are any employee then. Some people say faculty, some people say staff. So I'll just say staff members, any employee. Administrators, the law really dictates how you evaluate administrators now. It's going to be tied to how well their buildings do, you know, data driven. So a majority of their, I have a couple problems with just doing it the way the state does. So I would have, one part of it would have goal driven, and then the data component. So it would be 2 parts. I think everybody needs to have goals, myself included. You have to have something that you're shooting for to improve. In my goals, I always ask the board to have assessment goals, improvement of student achievement. You know, I think it's a natural part of a superintendent's job. You know, this year fiscal issues have been obviously part of my goals. You know, so but I think it's important for administrators, you know, to have goals, and then you tie it to the improvement of the building and the teachers and and the improvement of the school building in general. As far as ineffective staff members, you're only as good as your weakest link. And I think what happens is you have to teach everyone in the district. If you want to be great, you can't accept mediocrity. You just can't. So if you talk to any staff member in any department, they always know where the weak links are. They always do. They'll tell you. So why do administrators in those situations not do something about it? It drives me nuts. If you have an ineffective staff member, it's usually an administrator's fault. I hate to say that, we're administrators, but that's what happens. So it needs to be addressed. But I have found that small percentage of people don't want to be better. Rick DeFore, always the American educator that I respect a lot, he always says nobody wants to be the worst in their building or the worst at what they do. No one does. And if they do, that's a good sign that they don't care about their job. So what I always do is I always say that you need to address it immediately. And if it means putting them on a plan of action, if it means you know, putting letters in their file or whatever it does to motivate them to be the best they can be, we have to do it. Our kids deserve it. Our district deserves it. You know, to be the best we can be, you have to do it. So
I had a bad salesman one time over in Australia.
Okay.
I was working with him over there, and he was, all I had to do was work with him.
Yep.
Train him. He didn't completely get it, didn't have
Yep.
the knowledge.
Yep.
Now he's one of the top guys over there,
Yep.
well, Australia and New Zealand both.
Yep.
So I think what you gotta do is, well, same thing, he said, I think you've gotta, maybe it's not his fault, maybe it's my fault, as an administrator or a trainer, that I didn't train him right.
yeah. And truly that can happen if your job really is, you know, you have to
Find out why he's ineffective,
Mhm.
maybe, and see how you
yeah.
correct it.
And you're a mentor of, you know, like I have mentors that I look to over my career. You don't get where you're at in life. The egocentric people will say they are where they are because they're great. You know, I'm where I'm at, good or bad, because I've had good mentors through my career. I really have. You can have mentors that are subordinates too, people you respect that are in jobs that you're their boss too. I mean, there are some really good people that I've worked with that I respect that I've learned a lot from. You know, so, but I've had good mentors my whole career, and I can always say, hey, what would you do in this situation? What would you have done in that situation? So, yeah, I think you have a good point.
Thank you.
What do you see as the superintendent's and the board's role in the collective bargaining process?
I've been asked this in my life. Truly, what my role is what you say my role is. And I don't mean that facetiously. But some boards like to have superintendents very active. Some boards like to be very active. I'm not just trying to avoid this question. I think it's silly for a superintendent to go into a district where a board wants to be active in negotiations and say you can't be active in it. But you better understand what the board wants to do and what your role is as a superintendent, get that understood. So that's what I'm saying. I have been directed at every place I've been as an administrator at the building level and as a superintendent, I've been a negotiator. It's one of those necessary evils that I've actually become fairly good at. It just has to be done. I've negotiated in my current job 2 teachers' contracts, and because of the financial troubles we're in right now, our teachers' contract is reopened to discuss a couple items, financial items obviously, and our support staff is open right now. I've settled 2 of their contracts. I've also been on multiple negotiating teams throughout my administrative career. So, you know, I think it's important just to understand what the board, I've seen successful board teams, I've seen not successful board teams. It's difficult when you're a board to be on a negotiating team because you'll get peppered by people wanting to give their input. Some board members are really good at it, and some board members, they don't like to do it. So it's really what you want the superintendent to do, and that's the best answer I can give you. But I will be open to doing it. If you want me to do it, I've done it, and I'm good at it. Unfortunately, I am. So.
Can't follow up there? But I'm sure you probably had a broad range then of experiences, interest-based and collaborative, or
Yes.
the other one, the hard stick and
Yeah.
carrot or whatever.
You want to know what type I am?
Well, that, I wouldn't, you just told me you wouldn't be any type. Now, is that true, altogether true, or do you lean?
I am more of an interest-based person. I'm much more, like I told you before, I kind of played my cards to you. I'm more transparent. I just believe that you go to the table, you tell truth, and you show the people you're negotiating with, and I say with, not against, because these are people, when you get done, you walk out the door and they're your colleagues. So it's like I always tell people, this is business. You know, quit getting mad. This is business. My job is to negotiate a contract on behalf of the district. And your job is to negotiate it on behalf of your group. Business. When we're all done, we're going to shake hands, right? And you're not going to get mad. And then I said, if you start getting mad, we're done for the night. And I've been very successful with that philosophy, because we're colleagues. But it's a necessary thing that has to happen. And the budget, I've always opened it up. I don't make them FOIA it. And here, you want a copy? There it is. Go talk to me, and I'll give it to you. There it is. That's how much money we have. And then I have a very open relationship with the board, and we go into closed session. We talk about it. And I get everybody's opinion. We talk about where we're going to go and what our philosophy approach to the negotiation process is going to be. So then I write down very carefully what every board member says and where, so I can check my notes, and so that there's a reason for that. Because when things get really ugly and we go to close the closeout and there's a tentative agreement, then I know that I have a pretty good idea of what everybody was at, where they were at. So I know. Right now that's important, because 1% can mean the difference between settling or not settling. So. Now it's the other way. It's how much they're going to give up. So it's been a little bit different this time.